My coworker at the laundromat kept hiding inside the machines. Last year, before moving away for college, I worked at a small laundromat near my parents' home. I noticed a help wanted sign while out shopping with my dad and thought it would be a simple way to earn some extra cash. The woman who owned the place interviewed me briefly and had me start that very same day. Before I clocked in, she introduced me to her daughter, Mia, who also worked there. Mia was petite, energetic, and a little strange. The first thing she did when we met was say, "Hey, can you do this?" before rapidly vibrating her eyes side to side. It's difficult to describe, but the way her eyes flickered along with her huge smile made the whole thing feel unsettling. Mia was only a year or two younger than me, still in her teens, but her behavior felt exaggerated and overly childish. I figured she was simply trying to be friendly in her own way, so I played along. The rest of the shift passed with basic small talk, and I didn't give it much more thought. Barely a week later, I caught Mia hiding inside one of the industrial dryers. Somehow, she had climbed inside and curled herself up in the drum. I only noticed because I heard giggling from within the machine, startling me. "What are you doing?" I asked, annoyed at her fooling around while I was busy working. Her large eyes peered at me from the darkness, her knees pressed tightly against her chest. "I'm just cleaning it," she claimed. I knew that wasn't true, considering I had already cleaned the lint traps earlier that day. After a few minutes, she crawled out like some sort of acrobat, drawing a few confused looks from nearby customers. Thankfully, no real harm was done. Things escalated a few days later. I was helping a young mother set up her laundry after her apartment machine broke. She had her little boy with her and seemed too distracted to keep much of an eye on him. Just as I finished explaining the detergent options, I heard a familiar, eerie giggle from the back of the store, this time followed by a child's laughter. A sinking feeling hit me immediately. Despite only knowing Mia for a week, I sensed that leaving a child alone around her was asking for trouble. "Excuse me?" I said to the mother, leaving her to load her washer. Most of our machines were standard 10 keys washers. A few larger 18 keys ones stood at the back, alongside a massive 33 key front loader. Nicknamed the Beast by Mia's mom, in all my time there, I had never seen the Beast actually used. Yet there Mia was, half inside it, playing with the little boy. Her lower body was tucked into the machine, while her arms leaned on the rubber seal, handing coins to the kid and pulling exaggerated, silly faces. Her eyes were vibrating again, and the boy was giggling uncontrollably. For a second, I stood frozen, unsure what I was witnessing. Then I heard the boy ask, "What do I do?" "Just close the door," Mia instructed, "and press the big red button." It dawned on me. She was coaxing the child into locking her inside the machine and starting a cycle. "Mia," I hissed, rushing toward them. "But what'll it do?" the boy asked. "I'll go on an exciting ride," she said, brightly. I grabbed the door just in time, stopping the madness. Both Mia and the kid looked irritated, like I'd ruined a fun game. "What were you thinking?" I demanded. "It was just a bit of fun, right, kiddo?" she said, ruffling the boy's hair. He scampered back to his mom, who was obliviously sorting her laundry at the far end. "Relax," Mia said, sensing my anger as she climbed out of the machine. "He wasn't actually going to do it." I shook my head and returned to work. thinking about how easily my own little brother would have done something reckless for a few dollars. Later that day, Mia's mom stepped out of her office, and I thought about reporting what happened. But seeing the way she doted on Mia like she could do no wrong made me hesitate. I hadn't even earned my first paycheck yet, and I desperately needed the money. I chose to stay quiet, a decision I would deeply regret. A few days later, Mia and I were working the evening shift. The store was nearly empty, close to closing time. I was placing a damp sock in the lost and found basket when Mia appeared behind me and asked, "Do you like me?" I frowned, focusing on the sock. "Yeah, of course." Even as the words left my mouth, I knew they sounded fake, but I needed to keep the job a little longer. "Then why don't you ever look me in the eye?" she pressed. I turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "Do you like me?" she repeated, more serious this time. Usually she wore a playful expression, but now her face showed disappointment. My throat went dry. "Yes," I croaked. "Liar," she said. Suddenly her eyes started vibrating again, but this time they seemed to pull me in. My legs moved against my will as she slowly backed toward the machines, drawing me along. I realized, too late, that she was leading me toward the beast. "Don't worry," she said, her voice distant like an echo. "It'll just be a little fun." Her eyes locked mine as she climbed into the huge machine, contorting her limbs unnaturally, while her head stayed eerily still. From inside the drum, her voice floated out. "Close the door. Set it to wash cycle. Max spin." I watched, horrified, as my hands obeyed without my consent. Desperately, I hoped that the machine wouldn't start without coins. But as I pressed start and the door clicked shut, I realized she had already preloaded it. She had planned everything. Water started filling the machine, rising up to her chin, but Mia never looked away. Even as the drum began to spin, her face remained fixed in the glass like an owl's head locked on its prey. The laundromat seemed to tremble as the beast spun faster and faster. I stood there, trapped in a nightmare, until a sudden surge made the lights flicker. In that instant of darkness, my trance broke. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes from her gaze. I heard her calling for me to look again, but I refused. My mind felt foggy and my body sluggish, but I knew I had to escape. If I tried to open the machine mid-cycle, I feared it would unleash something far worse. I rushed past her mother's office, praying she wouldn't come out and trap me again. Fortunately, the door stayed closed, and I managed to slip into the night. I never returned. When my parents asked why I quit, I told them I needed more time for schoolwork, and they accepted it without question. A few days ago, I finally worked up the nerve to check Google Maps to see if the laundromat was still there. No bad reviews, no mention of a creepy girl, just a fresh help-wanted sign and the blurry outline of a small blonde figure staring out the window. I closed the tab quickly. I thought telling this story might help me move on, but it hasn't. Even now, every time I close a washer door, I see her staring back at me. I've resorted to hand washing or buying new clothes, which is draining my savings. Maybe I should get help. Maybe I need it. My son's in prison for something terrible. He did at school and still thinks he was right. The visitation room is cold and sterile. A sheet of glass separates visitors from inmates, and the only way for a mother to speak to her son is through a worn, gray telephone. I sit stiffly on a hard plastic chair, waiting for Adam to appear. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to feel. Since the incident 2 weeks ago, life feels like it's been frozen in place. My body numb, my mind hollow. I haven't seen him since. He finally walks through the door, his head bowed low. The prison uniform hangs loosely on his thin, 145-pound frame. A tall, stern-looking officer escorts him to the seat and stands watch close by. Through the glass, I study my son's face. He avoids eye contact, but I can tell. He's ashamed. A mother always knows. We pick up the phones. "Hi, son," I say, keeping my voice even. "How are they treating you?" "It's okay, Mom," he answers. "I probably deserve it." His words stun me. Silence stretches between us for several seconds. "I just don't understand why you did it," I say at last, my composure slipping as tears fill my eyes. "But I'll always love you. You're still my son." Hearing that, he drops the phone, buries his face in his hands, and sobs like he did as a little boy. He eventually picks up the phone again. "Those kids I killed at school, Mom," he says carefully. "You have to believe me. They deserved it. They had to be stopped." The officer behind him stiffens, paying closer attention. "If they were bullying you, that's terrible," I tell him gently. "But that doesn't justify what happened. They weren't bullying me." He cuts me off, shouting. His outburst draws the attention of others in the room. The guard immediately steps forward, placing a firm hand on Adam's shoulder. "That's enough, Adam. Time to go." "Mom," Adam whispers urgently into the receiver as he's led away. "Check the glove compartment." I leave the room, dazed. Was my son imagining things, losing touch with reality? I hurry to my car, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere. The drive home is a blur. My mind races. How could I not have seen this coming? As a single mother, always exhausted from work, Adam just seemed like a quiet, withdrawn teenager. Suddenly, I notice a black car following me. The driver, a clean-cut man in dark sunglasses, resembles the prison guard from earlier. I take several random turns. He stays with me. I pull into a local store. He parks nearby, still watching. Inside, I grab a few items and wait in line, trying to piece together what's happening. Why would someone follow me? They already have Adam. Suddenly, someone calls my name. I startle and spin around. It's not the man from the car. It's Jenna, the mother of one of the 3 students Adam killed. She looks pale, her face blank. "Hi, Claire," she says softly. It takes a moment for me to respond. "Hi, Jenna. How are you?" "Not good," she says plainly. I wince. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I begin, my voice trembling. "What Adam did was inexcusable and—" "Claire, please," she interrupts kindly. "This isn't your fault. We both lost our sons that day." She reaches out and takes my hand. "From one mother to another," she says quietly. "We need to help each other." She pulls me into a tight hug, and for the first time since the tragedy, someone shows me true compassion. Leaving the store, I feel stronger, ready to confront the man in the car. But he's gone. Relief floods me. Back in my car, Adam's last words come back to me. I open the glove compartment. Inside is a small metallic object, a flash drive. At home, I head straight to my laptop. Night has already fallen. I understand why Adam would have hidden the flash drive. After the incident, The authorities seized everything. His computer, phone, even my own devices. This laptop is new, a replacement from work. With shaking hands, I plug in the USB. Inside is a folder filled with photos. At first, the pictures are ordinary. Shots of the 3 kids Adam killed, captured during daily school life. Eating lunch, walking home, studying. They seem perfectly normal. No hint of cruelty or bullying. But then the images change. One photo shows one of the boys kissing a girl behind the football field, someone outside their group. Then, in a grim concrete setting, the 3 students are shown drenched in blood, standing over the same girl's body, now torn apart. Their eyes appear unnaturally white in the images. I shift in my seat, unnerved. The photos grow darker. The trio luring victims, a janitor, an elderly woman, a small child. The final pictures show them emerging from alleys, their clothes stained red, their eyes eerily glowing. The photos seem taken in secret, from a distance. I feel sick. Was this what Adam meant? Who or what were these kids? Suddenly, I hear the front door open. "Who's there?" I call, my voice tight with fear. No answer. Only Adam and I have keys. Could it be the man from the black car? Heart pounding, I move cautiously down the hallway. I've called the police. I bluff, even though my phone is still on the kitchen counter. At the door stands a figure. It's Jenna. "Jenna?" I ask, confused. Is something wrong? Her face is blank, void of emotion. She steps closer. "I don't know what Adam told you, or what he left behind," she says in a flat voice. "But I can't let you keep it." Her eyes shift, turning completely white, just like in the photos. Terror roots me to the spot. My body locks in place. Even blinking becomes impossible. Jenna approaches, slowly, savoring my helplessness. "Don't bother," she says with a smirk. "Humans are so weak." Her hands morph into sharp, gleaming blades. Then, gunshots, rapid and loud. I watch, helpless, as Jenna collapses to the ground, blood pooling beneath her. The man from the black car, the guard from the prison, is standing behind her, gun drawn. He fires one final shot into her head, silencing her for good. The spell breaks, and I collapse to the floor, gasping for air, overcome by sobs. The man kneels beside me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Miss Claire," he says gently, "I know this is overwhelming, but you're not safe here. What your son discovered, it's not of this world. I spent a week lost in the Amazon forest. What I experienced will haunt me forever. For most of my life, I considered myself a skeptic. I didn't believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything supernatural. I was the kind of person who would watch horror movies and laugh, confidently assuring others that none of it was real. I trusted in science, logic, and rational thinking. But after what happened to me in the Amazon, I'm no longer sure. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Still, what I saw, heard, and felt didn't seem like imagination. Even though my 3 friends didn't experience what I did, I know what I encountered was real. Or at least real enough to leave lasting scars. It began as a fun adventure, a thrilling escape. My friends, Daniel, Marcos, Luis, and I had always dreamed of doing something wild. So, we hired a guide, ventured deep into the Amazon rainforest, and planned to spend 2 weeks exploring. The guide stayed with us for the first 5 days, but after dropping us at a safe trail deeper in the jungle, we were left to continue alone. That's when things started to unravel. Day 1, we made a wrong turn early on. The GPS wasn't working properly, likely due to the thick canopy above, and we soon realized we were off course. Still, we weren't too concerned. We had enough supplies and believed we'd either find our way back or eventually come across a ranger station. We joked about it, calling it real-life Survivor. That night I thought I heard leaves crunching nearby, but brushed it off as just animals. After all, wildlife is everywhere in the jungle. Day 2, we tried to backtrack, but the jungle looked identical in every direction. We decided to follow a small stream, hoping it would eventually lead to a river or a village. Tension was rising. Luis was growing short-tempered, and Daniel had become unusually quiet. Later that night, as we sat around the fire, I caught a glimpse of something move among the trees. A tall, thin figure, too tall to be a person. It vanished the moment I turned my head. I chose not to mention it. Day 3. Everything shifted this day. We found strange markings carved deep into a tree. Long, unnatural scratches. They looked deliberate, like symbols or letters, but none of us recognized them. Marcos tried to joke it off, saying hunters or explorers probably made them, but the sight of them made my skin crawl. That night, I woke up to whispering. I couldn't recognize the language, just low, airy murmurs surrounding me. I sat up in fear, but my friends were still asleep. I tried waking Daniel, but he just mumbled and turned over. After a few minutes, the whispers faded. Sleep didn't come easily after that. Day 4. The jungle felt darker. I know it sounds strange, but the daylight seemed dim and wrong. As we moved forward, we came across another tree bearing the same strange symbols, miles away from the first. That night, I saw her for the first time. A girl, barefoot, wearing a white dress, standing at the edge of our firelight. Her hair covered her face. She didn't move. I froze in place. When I blinked, she was gone. And this is what truly shook me. She looked exactly like my daughter. 8 years ago, I lost my daughter, Sophia, in a car accident. She was just 7. A driver ran a red light. She was wearing a white dress that day, her long dark hair loose around her shoulders, just like the girl I saw. I've never truly healed from losing her. I still keep her photo in my wallet. I haven't spoken much about her since. Yet here, deep in the Amazon, I saw a girl who mirrored her perfectly. Same height, same hair, same stillness. But something about her felt wrong. Not innocent, not lost. Something else. Entirely. Day 5. The others were breaking down, each in their own way. Luis jumped at every sound. Marcos mumbled prayers under his breath. Daniel tried to keep it together, but his pale face gave him away. As for me, I kept seeing the girl, sometimes between trees, sometimes crouched behind rocks, always watching. The whispering had grown louder, relentless, even when I covered my ears. That night when I woke, I found child-sized handprints surrounding our campsite, forming a perfect circle in the dirt. I didn't sleep at all that night. I couldn't. Day 6. It became overwhelming. We were starving, dehydrated, and hopelessly lost. It felt as if the jungle itself was alive, breathing, watching. I started seeing faces in the trees, figures slipping behind vines. I heard my name being whispered, Mateo, again and again, coming from every direction. I screamed into the emptiness, fell to my knees, and begged it to stop. That night, I wandered to the riverbank, clutching a heavy stone, and stared into the water for what felt like hours. Then, I saw her again, Sophia, across the river standing in her white dress, silently watching. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. Her eyes were empty. I almost stepped into the water. I almost gave in. Anything to end the noise. As I took a step forward, the sound of a helicopter broke through the jungle. Day 7. We had activated our emergency beacon days earlier, and finally the signal had been picked up. The rescue team found us near the river. I don't remember much, only shouting, hands pulling me to safety, someone giving me water. I think I cried. I might have laughed. I'm not sure. We were airlifted out, and as the jungle shrank below us, I felt some of the weight lift from me, but only a little. Since returning home, everything feels different. I can't sleep with the lights off. I avoid forests. I startle easily at whispers. I've started therapy, but there are things I still can't bring myself to say aloud. When I look at Sophia's photo now, it's with a strange mix of love and fear, because I don't know if what I saw was just a hallucination, a spirit, or something else that wore her face. I went into that jungle already broken, but I came out something else entirely. I left parts of myself behind, somewhere among those trees. I don't know if I'll ever find them again. My mom swears she tucked me in last night. I live alone. I'm not even sure what kind of advice to ask for. I just know I need some. It all began around 3 weeks ago. On a cold Monday morning, I got a call from my mom. We stay in touch regularly, so hearing from her wasn't surprising. What made it odd was the timing. She usually respects that I'm busy at work. I'm a nurse, and she knows to call only if something urgent comes up. Expecting bad news, I answered quickly. But it was just her warm, familiar voice, casual and sweet, asking about my day. Don't get me wrong, I adore my mom and love talking with her. But it was a hectic day, and I tried to wrap up the call politely. Before I could, she said something that made me pause. I'm so glad you're sleeping better. You looked so peaceful. That stopped me. See, I'm in my 20s and have lived alone for nearly 7 years. Plus, my mom lives about 200 miles away. I brushed it off at first, but the more the day wore on, the more it bothered me. After my shift, I called her back. She greeted me with the same upbeat tone. That earlier comment was gnawing at me, so I asked her what she meant. Without hesitation, still cheerful, she explained. You've been tossing and turning a lot lately. I was just happy to see you sleeping soundly last night. I didn't know how to respond. I asked if she was joking. Her confusion seemed genuine. She insisted she had tucked me in the night before. I didn't want to upset her. My mother isn't young, and our family has a history of degenerative brain conditions. Worried, I gently changed the subject and kept the conversation light. Afterwards, I immediately texted my brother. He lives near her, and asked him to check on her. Since then, things have felt wrong. At first it was just small details, little things not as they should be. That same evening, I noticed the head chair at my dining table pulled out too far. I could have sworn I had tucked it in. Reason told me I must have forgotten, but when I found my bed neatly made, tucked tightly the way my mom used to when I was a kid, I couldn't explain it. I called my brother again, desperate for answers. Maybe Mom had visited without telling me. It seemed unlikely. He said he had just had tea with her that afternoon. She hadn't left town. Since then, things have only escalated. At night, I hear footsteps. When I get up to investigate, there's nothing, just silence, leaving me questioning myself. A few nights ago, I woke at around 3 a.m. to faint humming. So soft, but instantly familiar. It was the lullaby my mom used to hum when I was scared as a child. The sound came from the doorway. I was too scared to look, lying there frozen under the covers, hardly daring to breathe. The humming eventually faded. When I finally turned on the light, the room was empty, but the closet door, which I always leave open, was now closed. I've been calling my mom during the day, trying to make sense of this. Sometimes she denies everything. Sometimes she talks like nothing's wrong, often wandering into rambling stories that only frustrate me more. I even recorded our last call, hoping to catch something unusual, some slip that would explain all of this. But when I played it back, it was eerily perfect. No background noises, no teacup clinking, no ambient sounds. Just her cheerful voice, telling me she was proud, saying how calm I seemed now. I hadn't mentioned I was recording. Yet just before the call ended, she said, "You should stop doing that. It's not polite." Since then, paranoia has taken over. I've stopped sleeping in my bed, choosing the couch instead, but no matter what, I always wake up tucked neatly under the covers in my bed. Last night I stayed up as long as I could, determined to catch whatever was happening. I don't remember falling asleep, but I do remember waking up, and I remember the hand pulling the blanket over me. It wasn't hers. It was colder, thinner. The fingers were too long and lacked the slight tremble my mother's hands always had. When it brushed my forehead, it left no warmth, only a pressure, as if memorizing me. I kept my eyes shut. I didn't dare look. Somehow, I knew. If I looked at it, it would look back. I could feel it lean closer, pressing into the mattress. Its breathing was slow and heavy. Then, something soft, frayed almost, dragged across my cheek. Hair, maybe. But it smelled foul, like spoiled meat left in the sun. Then it spoke. "You don't cry anymore. Not like before." It was trying to sound like her, but it wasn't right. The words were choppy, like someone reading from a script. Beneath it, I heard something heavier, labored, and eager. I opened my eyes. No one was there, yet the blanket beside me moved up and down, as if an invisible body was mimicking my breathing. A deep dent pressed into the mattress, and on the pillow next to mine, there was a thick, dark smear, brownish red, with edges crumbling like old, rotten blood mixed with dirt. When I glanced at the mirror across the room, something was sitting on the edge of the bed. At first, I thought it was her. The hair was the same length, parted down the middle, but it was patchy, matted like wet straw in places, with clumps missing, revealing skin stretched too tightly, stitched like rough burlap. It tilted its head, the movement unnatural and jerky, like a marionette tangled on its strings. Slowly, it began to turn toward me. Every part of me screamed to look away, but I couldn't. The face that met mine in the mirror was almost my mother's. Almost. It had eyes where hers should have been, but they were cloudy and too large, like glass marbles pushed into clay. The nose looked crushed, broken, and healed wrong. The mouth was the worst. It stretched far beyond natural, split at the corners, lips scabbed and peeling back to reveal rows of tiny, baby-like teeth. Dozens of them, gleaming, too white, too clean. It stroked the pillow gently. Then it looked up, not at the bed, but directly into the mirror, directly at me, and it smiled. I backed away, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. I wanted to run, to hide, but I was frozen. The thing on the bed tilted its head again, curious. Then it raised a long, trembling arm and waved. I turned, and there was nothing there. When I looked back into the mirror, it had vanished. The room was normal again, messy blankets and silence. I stood there, frozen, barely breathing. Then my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was gentle, soothing. "Don't be scared, sweetheart," she said. "We just miss you." My brother returned from a solo hike, but it wasn't really him who came back. He was only gone for 2 days. Said he needed to clear his head, so he packed light and headed up into the Uintas with his usual setup. Nothing unusual. He'd done it before, but this time, when he returned, something felt wrong. It started the moment he walked in. No greeting. No, "I'm back." Just opened the door, set his pack down, and stood in the kitchen as if he'd forgotten why he was there. I was at the table, mid-bite. He looked at me and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good trip?" I asked. He nodded, still smiling. That smile stayed plastered on his face the entire evening. Not when he mentioned spotting mountain lion tracks by his camp. Not when I noticed he was wearing my sweatshirt, the one he always refused to wear. Not even when I asked which trail he took and he replied, "North Ridge." There is no North Ridge. Not around here. That night I couldn't sleep. Something about the way he moved seemed off. Too smooth. Too deliberate. At one point, I got up to check the locks and caught a glimpse of him in the hallway mirror. He wasn't looking at his reflection. He was staring at the empty space beside it. The next morning, I found a dead bird on the porch. Not torn apart, just placed there neatly, like an offering. He said he didn't leave it. Then he asked if I remembered when our mom died. The thing is, she's still alive. I waited until he went outside. He said he wanted to feel the sun, but just stood there in the middle of the yard, arms hanging loosely, face tilted up like he was trying to remember what warmth even was. That gave me about 10 minutes. I went straight for his pack. First, it seemed normal. His knife, half-empty water bladder, unopened trail snacks. But in the bottom pouch I found something he'd never bring home. A lock of hair, tied with red thread, dry, brittle. Not his color, not mine. It looked ancient, like it had been preserved in salt or ash. Beneath it was a scrap of parchment, drawn in rough charcoal, circles layered with jagged lines, stick figures twisted around a central mass. I didn't recognize the symbol, but the longer I stared, the more familiar it seemed. When I flipped it over, a single word was scribbled in tiny, frantic handwriting. "Return." I barely zipped the back shut before I heard the back door creak open. He stepped inside, eyes still, tracking the ceiling like something might be watching him from above. "You've been in my bag?" he asked, voice even. I lied, said no. He smiled, that same unnerving smile. It didn't falter as he poured himself a glass of water, gulped it too fast, then refilled it. His throat didn't even make a sound while swallowing. Later that night, I woke to the sound of him humming, a song from our childhood, but the melody was wrong. Notes twisted where they shouldn't be. The words no longer rhymed. When I peeked into the hallway, I saw him standing outside my door, back turned, perfectly still, just listening. When I asked what he was doing, he didn't respond. He just walked away. The next morning, he was already seated at the kitchen table when I got up. No coffee, just sitting there. He looked at me with that same too wide smile and said, "Why'd you lie, little brother?" He knew. He knew I'd gone through his things. I didn't answer. I just stood there, heart pounding, wondering how long he had known, wondering if he'd ever truly looked away. He didn't push, just smiled and went back to staring at the table. Later he left again. No jacket, no goodbye. He just walked into the tree line and disappeared like he belonged there. This time, I didn't check the back. I waited. After midnight, he returned. His hands were caked with dirt. His shirt was torn. No blood. But something was wrong, like his body didn't fit inside his clothes anymore, like he was stretching beyond himself. He didn't say a word, just passed me and headed straight to the basement. That's when I heard it, knocking, but not from the door, from inside the back. Slow, wet, rhythmic, like knuckles dragging against plastic. I opened it. The first thing I saw was the hair again, matted now, damp, with something dark. Underneath it, wrapped in a tattered gray cloth, was something else. I should have stopped there. I didn't. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a jar, sealed with wax and twine. Inside it was a mouth, just a mouth, no face, twisted in a silent scream. Gums peeled back, lips stitched shut with sinew. But it was breathing. The glass fogged up every few seconds. It was trying to speak, and then I realized it looked like mine. I dropped it. The jar didn't break. It just rolled to the edge of the floor, vibrating softly. Then, from the basement, I heard his voice call out. Except it wasn't really his. It was mine. Low, hollow, like he was still figuring out how to use it. "Why'd you go through my things, little brother?" I didn't answer. I was too busy watching the jar. It was smiling now. I once found a wallet deep in the forest. Strangely, it used to tell me stories at night. Since I was little, I've been afraid of water. I could never grasp at the comfort others found in it. It felt limitless, even when you could clearly see its edges, even when you could feel the lake's bottom and the sticky mud between your toes. Water felt heavy, even while floating. It stung. My eyes chilled my body, like a lifeless weight. I was the youngest of 5. Our summers were long and uneventful, the days blending into one another until they became a single, colorless memory, just empty stretches between school years. We lived by the sea, and my siblings would spend hours swimming until their skin wrinkled. I stayed on the shore, watching, until boredom set in. That that's when I'd wander into the woods. I often pretended to be a lone survivor, gathering supplies after a disaster. But most of the time I forgot the game and simply went treasure hunting. I found rocks, bones, old clothes. My parents never let me keep any of it. The woods felt infinite too, but a smaller, more manageable infinity than the sea. They stretched only as far as I dared to go, and never pushed back. If the beach belonged to my siblings, the woods were mine. Maybe that's why I found it, because I was the only one really searching. It almost disappeared into the roots and dirt. I don't remember spotting it, just that one moment I was walking, and the next I was crouched down, staring at worn leather. I picked up the wallet. It was lighter than I expected. Inside were a few coins and 2 small bills. Not much, but enough for me to pocket it proudly. It was the first money I ever earned without asking for it. There were also 2 photographs and a folded note. One photo showed a woman turned away from the camera. The other, a child at play. I pocketed the wallet and unfolded the note. Dear Austin, beauty fades and rots. Only the soul lingers. Don't fear me when I walk behind you. Lori. The handwriting was neat but oddly sharp in places, as if the writer's hand had twitched. I wasn't superstitious, but something in me shifted. I suddenly felt small, exposed. The woods around me seemed to tighten. Was someone watching? I calmed myself by thinking about the money and how cool I'd look, showing it off. I barely remember how I got back to the beach, just that I marched over to my brother Rob and shoved the wallet in his face. Look what I found, and I'm keeping all of it. He turned it over, opened it, and pulled out one of the photos. Where'd you find this, Oliver? In the woods? Yeah. I grinned, proud. Why wasn't he grinning back? You know those woods are haunted, right? He said, raising an eyebrow. Maybe you shouldn't take what isn't yours. Yeah, right. The tree ghost's gonna hunt me for stealing old photos. They might do worse. We stared at each other. His serious tone crept into me. When he finally smiled, I almost felt like returning the wallet. I'm messing with you. Good job. First and last love note you'll ever get. He tossed the wallet back and walked off. My other siblings weren't impressed. I doubt they would have noticed if I'd disappeared entirely. I shoved the wallet under my bed and went to sleep. I don't remember dreaming, but I kept waking up, overcome by the feeling that something or someone was approaching. When I finally did sleep, I had one clear dream. I was talking to my mom about my birthday when she casually asked if I knew there was someone under my bed. I can't remember what I answered. I just remember morning arriving, and with it, the fear fading under the daylight. I pulled the wallet back out. The note remained. Dear Austin, beauty fades and rots. Only the soul lingers. Don't fear me when I walk behind you. Lori. I stared at it. Something about it was different, but I couldn't tell what. I shoved it into a drawer and forgot about it for a few days. But at night, lying in bed, my mind kept returning to the note. Something about it nagged at me. Finally, I couldn't resist. I needed to check it a 3rd time. I wish I hadn't. Curiosity often speaks louder than caution. In the dark, alone, I opened the wallet once again. Dear Austin, beauty fades and rots, only the soul lingers. Don't fear me, for I am behind you. Lori. My heart sank. The air left my chest. I froze. The longer I stayed still, the harder it became to move. I gasped for breath, unsure if the breathing sounds I heard were only my own. Eventually, I turned around. Nothing, just my bed. My closet. It's under the bed, a thought whispered. No, I refused to check. I wouldn't look, but I knelt anyway, moving as if something were pulling me down. I lowered my face toward the darkness. Nothing. It's in the closet. I stood up, staring straight at it. The closet stared back. There wasn't enough room for an adult, but a child could fit inside. My shirt clung to my sweaty back. I stretched out my hand and switched on the lamp. Warmth flooded the room instantly. Relief, too. What an idiot, I thought. Fear can sharpen the mind, or erase it completely. I threw the closet door open. Nothing. Just clothes, neatly hung. I laughed with relief and checked the note again. It was blank. I flipped it over. Still blank. The photos were unchanged, though. I hadn't studied them closely enough to tell if they'd shifted. I shoved everything back into the wallet and hid it under my pillow. This way, I could grab it easily without leaving my bed. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking the note over and over, hoping it would stay blank. The next night, I dreamt something strange. I was walking along a beach. For the first time, the salty water didn't disgust me. Seagulls circled overhead. Their cries sounded playful to me, not desperate. I didn't notice, at first, the second set of footprints forming alongside mine. When I stopped, they stopped. A voice whispered in my ear, "Don't. You'll be scared." It was a woman's voice, warm and familiar like my mother's. "Sing to me," I thought. Her voice chuckled. "I'm not your mother. Are you Lori, the woman in the picture?" "I'm Lori, yes. Were you the one behind me that night?" "I can only ever be behind you," she said softly. "You should always keep your back to the dead." I realized then that this wasn't my beach, and the woman wasn't my mother. "Can I wake up? Please?" "I'd like to tell you a story first," she said. "Children love stories. I can tell you do. If I listen, will you help me wake up?" "Of course." Her words felt rehearsed. She whispered, "I sat in the woods so long, practicing. Do you know the Star Spiller?" I shook my head. He was once a clockmaker who could mend broken things. One night, a woman with a strange watch asked him to fix it. She promised him the power to stop time itself. He became obsessed. The watch began to breathe. When she returned, he no longer remembered her. The watch had claimed him. He killed her, fed the watch her blood, and the watch came alive. But time, once disturbed, unravels. The clockmaker became something else entirely, and he's still out there, spilling stars one by one. Listen for him. As her voice faded into sunrise, I woke up, drenched in sweat, my mind heavy and slow. The next night brought another dream. She told me about the orchard's keeper, a farmer who grew obsessed with growing sweeter, bigger fruit. He buried living creatures beneath his trees until even his family disappeared under the roots. Now he remains underground, his hollow bones feeling every footstep. Every night, a new story. I lived for sunset when her clear voice would return. By day, I drifted aimlessly, plagued by uneasy thoughts. I remember every story, especially the last one. "Have you heard of the wallet stealer?" she whispered. "He was a photographer with a terrible hunger. He found a wallet once, kept it. Over time, it grew heavier and heavier until curiosity made him open it. Inside, he saw his own beating heart. A loud creak shattered the dream. Banging on my bedroom door woke me. My mother burst inside. "Oliver, who are you talking to? What have you done?" "What? Mom, who are you speaking to?" I heard it. A terrible, hoarse voice. "And your hands? What did you do to your hands?" I looked down at my bruised, scratched arms, too stunned to answer. "I was dreaming, Mom." Her eyes widened as she noticed the wallet in my hands. "What's that?" She snatched it away and flipped through it. When she read the note, her face changed. She looked up at me, then behind me. Her frown disappeared, replaced by a careful, almost fearful calm. "I understand," she said softly. "Maybe I should keep this. It's hurting you." Her smile reassured me. She led me to her room, and we spent the day watching TV together. Her warmth, her presence, slowly pushed the stories out of my mind. Years later, she confessed. That day, she had seen something, someone, in the window behind me. I asked her what the woman looked like. I asked her what the final version of the note said. She never answered. The gray squirrel in my neighborhood might not be what it seems. It could actually be some sort of sinister shapeshifter. I recently moved into a new apartment. The place is great, and the neighbors are welcoming. But there's something odd. A squirrel that keeps following me around. How do I know? Because every time I go for a walk, it trails me, hopping along fences and shadowing my steps. Whenever I stop to watch it, the creature freezes in place, almost as if it's been caught doing something it shouldn't. I've started calling this squirrel Stranger. He doesn't look like the others in the neighborhood. While most squirrels here have brown fur and full, fluffy tails, Stranger's fur is gray, and his tail looks scraggly, almost as if it was singed by electricity. Plus, a chunk of his left ear is missing. In any case, he gives me the creeps, and I'm frustrated that my roommates act like it's nothing. Just the other day, Stranger was sitting in a tree outside our apartment. I threw a rock to scare him off, and he darted away. But something fell from his mouth and landed in the grass. When I got closer to see what it was, I almost fainted. What the hell? Stranger had been gnawing on a human finger. Gross. I immediately called the police. They told me there had been an incident downtown where a woman was attacked by a homeless man. She survived, but 2 of her fingers had been severed. Absolutely revolting. The officers came, collected the finger, and told me to reach out if I had more questions. I did follow up the next day. They confirmed that the finger belonged to the woman who had been attacked. Completely chilling. I mean, seriously, what's going on? Why would Stranger have a woman's finger? Aren't squirrels supposed to eat nuts and seeds? Disgusting. That night I couldn't sleep. My roommates were working late, and I was alone. Around 2 a.m., I heard scratching at the door. Panicking, I grabbed my baseball bat and rushed to the window. Standing outside in the driveway was Stranger. What the? He just stared at me with his small, dark eyes. I had enough of him stalking me. I ran outside, shouting, "You dropping fingers around me, dude? Let's go." But when I reached the driveway, he had vanished. I went back inside, drenched in sweat, completely on edge. I turned on a movie to stay awake, but must have nodded off because a metallic scraping sound at the door woke me up. Someone was trying to break in. Heart racing, I sprinted to the living room, but froze. Near the front door was a homeless man, hunched over something, his back facing me. He wore a black trench coat, had long, dirty gray hair, and smelled faintly of rotting meat. His left ear, just like strangers, was partly missing. Wait, what? Oh my God, I whispered, too afraid to move. Somehow he hadn't noticed me yet. I tried stepping back, but accidentally creaked a floorboard. He turned around. His eyes were black, just like strangers. He smiled, revealing a mouth full of yellow teeth. Please, don't hurt me, I whispered, tears welling up. He just laughed, set something on the ground, and then walked out into the night. As soon as he was gone, I barricaded the door and called the police, shaking so badly I could barely speak. When I dared to look at what he had left behind, my stomach dropped. Another human finger. Over the following weeks, my roommates and I stayed elsewhere. Police scoured the neighborhood but found no trace of him. It was like he had vanished into thin air. The local news dubbed him the Finger Thief. Another week passed with no sightings. Maybe someone else had handled him, I thought. Days went by, and I started convincing myself he was gone for good. Maybe things could finally go back to normal. I couldn't have been more wrong. This morning, when I stepped outside for a walk, I spotted something perched high in a tree. It was Stranger, staring right at me. I have no idea how he found me again, but he tilted his head slightly and raised a paw, almost like he was waving. I found a note tucked inside an old jacket. It was in my handwriting, but I don't remember ever writing it. It all started when I finally decided to clean out my closet, something I usually put off for months. This time, though, I was determined to get it done. My closet was a disaster. Clothes from college, jackets that no longer fit, and random things collected over the years. You know how it gets. I reached for a jacket I hadn't worn in a long time, one that fit a bit too snugly now, but still brought back memories of simpler days. Walking around campus, rushing to classes, just the typical college experience. I pulled it from the back of the closet, brushed off the dust, and noticed something strange. There was something in the pocket. I couldn't remember ever putting anything there, and I hadn't worn the jacket in years. The idea of finding something inside felt oddly reassuring. It was a small folded piece of paper, the kind that felt aged but still had a slight crispness. I unfolded it, half expecting to find an old receipt or a concert ticket I had forgotten about. Instead, it was a note, written clearly in my handwriting. I froze. It wasn't a style of writing I used now. It was definitely how I wrote years ago. Still, I was certain I hadn't written it. The words were clear, steady, and unsettlingly calm. The note said, "Do not open the door at 3:23 a.m. Don't respond to the knock." My stomach dropped. I checked at the time. It was 3:22 a.m. I checked again. Still 3:22 a.m. How could this note exist? I hadn't written anything like this in years. I couldn't even recall leaving a note like that. Yet there it was, unmistakably in my own handwriting, hidden away in a jacket I hadn't touched for ages. I stared at the paper for what felt like forever. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, thick with the scent of old leather and paper. I thought about throwing the note away or burning it, but something urged me to keep reading. I'm serious. The knock will come. It will start soft but grow louder. Don't answer. It's not you on the other side. That didn't even make sense. The words twisted my mind into knots. Before I could process it any further, it happened. I heard a knock. It sounds unbelievable, but it wasn't just a normal knock. It was faint, just enough to notice, almost as if I was imagining it. My heart raced as I looked up and checked the time once more. 3:23 a.m., exactly as the note had warned. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was all in my head. I stayed frozen, staring at the door, waiting. Minutes dragged by. The silence felt unbearable. Then, another knock. This time, more deliberate, heavier, slower, like someone knew I was there. But that couldn't be. I was alone. No one else had a key to my apartment. No one should even know I was awake at this hour. I've read enough horror stories to know the signs. But this felt different. Too personal. Too real. That's what truly unsettled me. I refused to answer the door. I won't. But each time I glance at the clock, it's like time is slipping away from me. The knocking hasn't stopped. It's still there. Soft, persistent, almost whisper-like now. I can't tell if it's real or if my mind is betraying me. So here I am, writing this down, because I don't know who else I can tell. I don't know what else to do. The note was right. 3:23 a.m. came, and now I sit here, in the darkness, listening to something I can't explain. If the note was right about that, what else could be true? I'm terrified to find out. I feel like I'm still stuck in high school. The buildings have grown larger, and everything is connected in ways I never noticed before. It's hard to explain, but I'm still here. I should have gone home by now, but somehow I'm trapped, and nothing feels quite right anymore. It started out simple enough. I was packing up my bag after my last class, just like any other day. The bell rang, and students began heading out, talking about their plans for after school. I grabbed my jacket, said goodbye to a few friends, and made my way to the stairwell. I figured I'd be home in 20 minutes as usual, but the moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt off. This wasn't the hallway I had walked 1,000 times. No, it was different. The walls stretched farther than they should have, and the floor tiles, ones I'd been walking on for years, looked strangely new, as if they were trying to appear older than they were. At first, I thought maybe I was just tired or distracted, so I took the stairs to the ground floor, expecting to see the familiar hallway leading to the front doors. But when I reached the bottom, there was a hallway I didn't recognize. I stopped for a moment, trying to figure it out. There had never been a hallway here before. Old lockers lined the walls, lockers that were supposed to be gone by now. I felt like I was walking in circles. I started walking down the unfamiliar hallway, thinking maybe I had ended up on the wrong floor. But the longer I walked, the more I realized this didn't make sense. It was the same place, but everything felt wrong. The lockers were all closed, yet some were slightly ajar, as if they hadn't been used in years. And the light above me flickered, like the school was glitching, not quite real. As I passed classroom doors, some slightly open, there was no sound, no students, no teachers, just silence. Then I saw someone I recognized, Jessica, from history class. She looked the same, but something was off. When I waved at her, she gave me a strange look, like she didn't recognize me. She smiled, but her eyes were empty. There was a blankness in her gaze that made my stomach churn. "Hey, Jess," I said, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. "What's up?" She didn't respond. She just nodded and walked past me, as if I weren't there. For some reason, I felt compelled to follow her. Maybe I was trying to make sense of what was happening. But the longer I walked, the more wrong. Everything seemed. I started seeing other people, students, teachers, but they weren't real. They moved as if they were going through the motions, but none of them felt present. It was like they were trapped in a loop. I went to the cafeteria, hoping it would help clear my mind. I figured if I could just sit down and have a snack, I'd feel better. But when I walked in, it was completely empty. No students, no lunch ladies, just silence. I grabbed a bag of chips from the counter, but the whole place felt cold and lifeless. No one was eating or sitting at the tables. I tried to convince myself the lunch period must have ended early, but then the bell rang again. It wasn't the usual bell. It was deep, echoing through the walls, like it was calling to me. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran out of the cafeteria, hoping to find an exit, but the doors wouldn't open. The hallway stretched endlessly, and suddenly, I realized I had no idea where I was. Every turn I made led to another hallway, another set of stairs, another door that wouldn't open. I've been walking for hours now. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Hours. I've tried everything. I've gone up, down, tried, retracing my steps, but the school just keeps changing. It's like the walls are shifting, pulling me deeper inside. And the people, they're still here, but they don't act like they used to. They just stare at me, like they're waiting for something. I saw Mr. McCarthy, my old chemistry teacher, near the science wing. He looked exactly the same, but when I asked him where the exit was, he just stared at me with this strange look, as though he hadn't heard me. Then he pointed down the hallway, but I swear that hallway wasn't there a second ago. I turned to thank him, but when I looked back, he was gone. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is a nightmare or if I'm losing my mind, but I've been trying to escape for hours. Every door I open leads to more hallways, and the further I walk, the more the school feels like it's alive. The worst part, every time I check the clock, time seems to slow down. It's as if the seconds are stretching out, trapping me here. I feel like I'll never get out. I think something is waiting for me. I don't know what it is, but it's here. It's always been here. Now I'm just waiting for whatever happens next. Death Road. I want to preface this story with an apology. It's been almost 10 years since the event took place, so some of the details are a bit fuzzy, but I'll recount it to the best of my ability. It was mid-March, and my friends and I were in our early 20s, passionate about outdoor activities like backpacking, hiking, and camping. Living in the Pacific Northwest, we were fortunate to have access to the perfect environment for our adventures. We had planned a weekend camping trip, so earlier that week we went scouting for a good campsite. After driving a bit outside of town, we found a rural road that looked promising. A few miles down the road, we encountered an intersection. We could either continue straight where the paved road turned into gravel, turn left to a creek just off the road, or turn right toward a less traveled grassy road. We chose the right turn to explore what lay ahead. The road curved left gently for about 100 yards, then opened into a small roundabout with a flat camping area to the right. It It appeared to have been used before, though there was a lot of untouched grass around the area, suggesting it hadn't been visited recently. We liked the spot, but felt it was too close to the road, so we decided to explore a bit further. Not long into our search, we found a trail leading deeper into the woods. We hiked up it for a quarter mile or so, and really liked the feel of the area. It was secluded enough that we could immerse ourselves in nature, and there was no cell service to distract us. After agreeing this would be the perfect spot for our weekend, we headed back home. Once we had cell reception again, one of us checked Google Maps to ensure the site wasn't on private property. Fortunately, the area was clear for miles. Since we all had Friday off work, we planned to pack up Thursday evening and head out that night to maximize our time in the woods. Thursday night came, and all of our gear was packed. We had enough food, water, and other necessities for a 3-day trip. When we arrived at the familiar grassy road, we noticed headlights reflecting in the dark, like the eyes of a large creature. It was a parked car, and our hearts sank. We could see a tent and hear a dog barking. After some quick discussion, we decided to head back home and try again the next night. The next evening, we returned. The car, tent, and barking dog were still there. While disappointed, we talked it over and decided to stay. We parked about 50 feet away from the car and tent, then hiked up the trail to avoid disturbing whoever was already there. As we hiked, the dog's barking grew louder and more frantic, though we assumed it was leashed or tied up. We moved quickly, heading up the trail in the dark, trying not to attract attention. The walk felt eerie, and we couldn't help but worry about someone confronting us for trespassing. But nothing happened. Once we found a good spot and set up camp, we began to relax. We joked about what the campers we passed must be thinking, playfully speculating about their possible reactions to our intrusion. Little did we know, the trip would soon take a turn none of us could have predicted. We spent Saturday hiking further along the trail and exploring the area. It was a quiet day with no major incidents, and we ended the night as we had the previous one. Sunday, however, would bring a shift in the atmosphere. Everyone was tired and a little hungover, ready to return to civilization. As we hiked back toward the car, we noticed a strange change. The woods were unnervingly quiet, with no sounds of wildlife. When we reached the camp, the car and tent were still there, but the dog had stopped barking. The scene was unsettling. The car was positioned on ramps as if someone had been working on it. Nearby, a plastic fold-up picnic table held various items: motor oil, transmission fluid, automotive tools, an open gallon of milk, paper plates, and miscellaneous food. It looked like someone had been fixing their car and stopped to eat, only to abruptly leave. Our curiosity got the better of us, and we carefully explored the site, looking for any explanation for why it had been abandoned so suddenly. As I walked through the campsite, my thoughts turned to missing persons cases. One of my friends pointed out that the car windows were heavily fogged. We tried to peer inside, but the windows were too tinted to see clearly. However, there was enough of a gap to notice the silhouette of a large dog in the back seat. It was sitting up, panting hard, but otherwise motionless. I was struck by the horrifying thought that the dog had been stuck in that car since Thursday night. When we first arrived, it hadn't barked since, possibly because it was too weak from dehydration. After a quick discussion, we decided that trying to break into the car or open a door would be too risky, as the dog could be aggressive or hurt itself. Since we had no cell service, we reluctantly decided to drive back to town and call animal control as soon as we could. Once we had service, I explained the situation to animal control, and they said they would send someone out to the area in a few hours. I thanked them and waited anxiously for a call back. Hours passed with no news. As evening approached, I became restless and called animal control again around 7 p.m. The officer informed me that he had made a mistake and had traveled several miles further down the gravel road instead of turning onto the grassy one. He had just returned to cell service when I called. He promised to try again the next day. By now, I was beside myself with worry for the dog. I briefly considered going back myself, but decided it was better to let the professionals handle it. The next day, I received no updates. By evening, I was losing hope. Then, one of my friends, who had been silently browsing her phone, gasped in shock when we asked what was wrong. She began reading aloud a news story from a city about 4 hours away from ours. The story described how animal control had responded to a call about a dog trapped in a car. Upon arriving, they found the car locked, and after calling for help, a state patrol officer identified the body of a woman in the back seat, along with the dog. We all sat in stunned silence for a few moments. Then, my phone rang, showing a private number. I answered, and a female voice introduced herself as a detective. She asked if I had called about the dog, and I confirmed that I had. She asked me to recount everything that had happened, which I did, leaving out the part about the news story. Something told me not to mention that yet. After hearing my account, she seemed surprised and asked if that was everything. I confirmed, and then asked about the dog. She reassured me that the dog was alive and in the care of animal control. I asked if she needed any further information, and she said no, but I would be contacted if anything came up. After the call ended, we all began discussing the details of the situation. We were relieved to find that none of us had touched the vehicle or disturbed the campsite. We couldn't help but imagine what might have happened if we had tried to help the dog ourselves. A few days later, I called the animal control officer again to check on the situation. He explained that the dog was being taken to a humane society to be rehabilitated, though it had begun to eat the deceased woman due to its extreme hunger. I asked if I could visit the dog, but was told it was still considered evidence and couldn't be seen. Weeks passed, and I called the Humane Society to inquire about the dog. Sadly, they informed me that it had been euthanized, as it was too traumatized to recover. Eventually, we received the coroner's report. The woman was identified as a transient mother with a son and an ex-husband. She had died from a drug overdose at approximately midnight. On the same Thursday, we had arrived at the campsite. Recently, I looked up the news story to refresh my memory and was shocked to find that there had been numerous mysterious deaths along that road for at least 16 years before our visit and continuing into 2025. We haven't returned to that area since, and, frankly, I don't think we ever will. I attended a rave at an abandoned factory, and it burned down. What I saw in the fire still haunts me. It all started when my friend Liam called me up. He told me he'd gotten tickets to one of those underground raves that pop up in strange places, like sewers or warehouses. This time, it was happening at an old abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of the city. I know, it sounds sketchy, but these events usually have decent backing and effort put into them, so the final venue is typically safe enough, at least not a complete disaster. Honestly, I'd always thought these raves were a little pretentious, even a bit lame. But since I didn't have anything else going on that night, I figured, why not? We arrived around midnight, and surprisingly, it was a great time. While it lasted, around 2 a.m., I found myself drunk and high in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, scrolling through Instagram reels. That's when the screams started, panicked voices. Then I smelled smoke, and my mind began to clear enough to realize something was wrong. I rushed out of the bathroom into a crowd of frantic people, the smoke thick enough to sting my eyes. I tried to find the exit, but it was pure chaos. People were running into me, and I eventually got knocked over, forced to crawl until I finally made it out of the crowd. When I stood up, I found myself in front of the makeshift stage, now completely engulfed in flames. That's when I saw him, a figure standing in the fire. He looked to be in his mid-20s, tall and thin with pale skin, wild dark hair, and strange, bulging, fish-like eyes. He wore a t-shirt and jeans and was holding a black camcorder up to his face. He showed no sign of reacting to the heat. His clothes weren't even burning. He stood there filming, looking directly at me. I couldn't be sure, but I felt like he was recording me. I locked eyes with him for what felt like just a few seconds, before the air became too thick to breathe. I turned and ran out of there as fast as I could. I don't remember how I made it outside, but I do remember collapsing on the grass, coughing uncontrollably. My vision was blurry, filled with orange shapes, and I heard voices asking if I was okay. I wasn't. I passed out shortly after and woke up in an ambulance with Liam by my side. I could see the relief in his eyes, quickly followed by frustration. "Dude, what the hell? Glad you're okay, but what were you doing in there?" he asked. I shook my head. "What do you mean?" What were you doing in there for so long? Did you hurt yourself?" I was confused. "What do you mean?" "I just got caught up in the crowd." Liam looked at me in disbelief. "You were the last one out." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "You came out 5 minutes after everyone else. Even the DJ got out before you." "What?" I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I didn't have the energy to argue. "What were you doing in there?" he asked again. I shrugged. Maybe I fell, hit my head or something. By the time we arrived at the hospital, I was feeling fine enough to decline further treatment. It wasn't worth the hassle, especially since my insurance wouldn't cover much. My lungs were still stinging, but it wasn't bad. The following nights were filled with paranoia. My mind was consumed with unsettling thoughts. What if that guy knew where I lived? What if he was following me? What if he was in my apartment right now filming me from the closet? It was a nightmare. I struggled to sleep, and when I did, the dreams were so vivid, they made me long for the waking world. To cope, I started drinking and smoking before bed. Not the healthiest solution, but it worked for a while. The paranoia slowly eased, and I started to sleep again, even without the alcohol. However, I continued smoking to keep the nightmares at bay. After a week, I began to push the incident out of my mind. It was just a crazy night, smoke-induced hallucinations, a close call, but nothing to dwell on. It felt like I could move on. That was until I met Cindy. I had never seen her before, so it caught me off guard when this tall brunette woman sat next to me on a park bench while I was sipping my Americano. She looked anxious, a little worried. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked. I shook my head. I don't think so. Where would we have met? She sighed, almost relieved. The factory. That hit me like a ton of bricks. All those awful memories rushed back in an instant. I was stunned, but she seemed patient, waiting for me to say something. You mean the rave? Yeah, I was there. That was crazy, I said, forcing the words out. Are you okay talking about it? After what happened to you? She asked. Of course I wasn't, but I lied. Yeah, I'm fine. Wait, what happened to me? She looked at me with sympathy. I tried to drag you out that night. Everybody else was running, but you were just kneeling there, staring at the stage. You wouldn't move. I was shocked. How long was I like that? At least half a minute, maybe more. I didn't stick around too long. I felt a chill run down my spine. What was I staring at? She shook her head. I don't know. I couldn't look. The flames were too much. We sat in silence for a moment. Are you okay? She asked, breaking the quiet. I mean, were you injured? I looked at the ground. Not really. She put her hand on my leg. It's just a relief to see you, to know you're okay. I looked up, and she was closer now. You made it out, you know. I managed a small smile, though I felt uneasy. Yeah, I guess. She smiled back and invited me over to her apartment later for some DoorDash. I agreed, figuring it was her way of feeling better about the whole situation. Plus, who passes up free food? That evening, I arrived at her place, and we went inside. She greeted me with a big smile, and on the counter were 2 large boxes of fried chicken. We hugged, grabbed beers, and sat on the couch. We watched Dune Part 2, though I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was too busy. After the movie, she pulled out a VHS tape. You like horror movies? She asked. I do, but with everything still fresh in my mind. I wasn't sure about watching one, but I didn't tell her that. I just nodded. Yeah, I love them. She went to the TV, pulled out an old VCR, and set it up. It looked ancient. After dusting it off, she inserted the tape, then sat back down, resting her head on my shoulder. The mood had shifted. Something felt off, though I couldn't place why. The TV flickered to life, showing a blank screen for about a minute before white text appeared. Part 1. The first scene was a long shot of an empty field at night. It lasted way too long, maybe 10 minutes, with just the wind moving the grass. It felt strangely unsettling. I commented on how odd it was, but Cindy didn't respond. Then, the scene shifted to someone walking through a dark forest. The footage felt eerie, with no sound other than the rustling of leaves. After some time, the camera focused on a building. A factory. The factory. I froze. No way, it couldn't be. But as the camera got closer, it became clear. This was the same factory. I watched as the cameraman walked toward the stage and began pouring gasoline on it. I couldn't watch anymore. I jumped off the couch, pulling my arm away from Cindy. What the hell are you showing me? I demanded. She looked surprised, almost amused. I thought you liked horror movies. Where did you get this tape? I've always had it, she said with a grin. What do you mean? Her smile faded, replaced by something colder. Sit down, she said. Your scene's coming up. Fuck that. I bolted for the door, down the hallway, down the stairs, and back to my building. I ran up to my apartment, checked the locks, and cracked open a beer. My heart raced. There was no way this was real, but how could I be sure? I called my friend Jack, a cop, and explained everything. He said he'd check into it and let me know what he found. I felt a little better. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat. I checked my phone, and there was a missed call and a text from Jack. That address you gave me doesn't exist. You sure you got it right? I checked again. He was right. The address Cindy had given me wasn't anywhere on the map. I called Jack again, and he confirmed it. The address didn't exist. It was nowhere nearby. That's when it hit me. I had no memory of even getting to her place that night. No memory of how I left or how I arrived. The only explanation left: I'm losing my mind. I've made an appointment with a psychiatrist to get help. I'll update you when I can, hopefully with better news. Weird things keep happening in my hometown. Lately, I've been pretty bored and between jobs, so I thought I'd share some strange experiences that have happened in my hometown. When I was about 10 or 11, my dad went to buy a safe from a guy he met at a pawn shop. I didn't have much going on that Saturday, so I decided to tag along and help him load it into the truck. The guy selling the safe lived on the other side of town, deep out in the countryside. When we pulled up to the house, my dad immediately had second thoughts. The place was a mess. The yard was overgrown and unkempt, and there was an old muscle car in the front yard, rusting away. The porch was cluttered with plastic bins full of old toys and random junk. We made our way through a narrow path between the piles of water-damaged items to the front door and rang the bell. After a muffled voice shouted something, a big, round-faced kid answered. He looked like he was in his late teens, and I could tell right away something was off. His eyes were spaced unusually far apart, and he just stared at us for a moment before processing what was happening. He finally spoke. "What's up?" My dad explained why we were there, and the kid went inside to fetch his father, a tall, thin man in a faded Iron Maiden shirt and a thick, creepy mustache. My dad had a quick conversation with him, and we were invited inside. The interior of the house was even worse than the outside. If you've ever watched Hoarders, you know exactly what it looked like. Piles of old newspapers and magazines everywhere, hampers filled with dirty clothes, and boxes of infomercial junk that had never been opened. We had to carefully navigate our way through the narrow paths created by all the clutter, trying to avoid the constant smell of cigarette smoke and urine. At one point, I heard a dog bark, but never saw it. When we finally reached the room with the safe, my dad was busy talking with the man, so I decided to explore a little. Something about the place piqued my curiosity. Like a train wreck I couldn't look away from. I wandered down the hall and entered a room that looked like it might have once belonged to a young child. There was an old pink crib in the corner, filled with dusty dolls, and a shelf with old kids' books and toys nearby. As I started sorting through some of the items, I found something strange. At the back of the top shelf, hidden behind some clutter, was a small shoebox. Being the curious kid I was, I couldn't resist opening it. Inside, wrapped in layer after layer of plastic, was something that took me a moment to process. A tiny, mummified baby. It looked like it had been premature, curled up as if it were sleeping. Its skin was dried and brown, almost leathery, and while it didn't smell as bad as I had expected, the sight of it still left me in shock. Its arms and legs were so delicate that I was afraid I might break it. I just stared at it for a while, unable to believe what I was seeing. I kept trying to convince myself it was just a doll or a prop, anything but what it actually was, a dead baby. After what felt like an eternity, I put the baby back in the box and returned to my dad. We quickly loaded the safe into the truck and left as fast as we could. On the way out, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the same fat kid from before standing on the porch, staring at me with a piercing glare. Did he know what I had found? To this day, I've never told my dad what happened that day. I think my sleep paralysis demon might be developing feelings for me. I really need to end things with my sleep paralysis demon. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? That moment when you want to scream, but no sound comes out. When you want to move, but your body feels completely unresponsive. If so, I really hope the entity haunting your paralysis isn't as persistent as mine. It all started the night I spent in my new apartment. After arranging the few pieces of furniture I had, I lay down in bed, feeling a sense of accomplishment. This was going to be my new home, the one I'd always dreamed of. Warm lights and plants scattered throughout, creating the perfect, cozy vibe. What I didn't realize was that this apartment would also become the home of my new uninvited boyfriend. The first night, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was still dark, and my bedside lamp emitted a soft, warm glow. I didn't mind waking up until I tried to reach for some water. That's when it hit me. I was having sleep paralysis. I tried to lift my finger. Nothing. Turn my head. Nothing. Say something. Nothing. I'd just have to wait it out. I'd experienced sleep paralysis before, and it usually wasn't too bad. Nothing terrifying, just dull. But that night was different. As I scanned the room, something caught my eye. Hair. There was hair sticking out from beneath the bedside. Holy crap. My whole body went rigid, and my heart raced. This had never happened before. It felt so real that every instinct screamed, "Get up!" But there was nothing I could do. I just lay there, unable to move or express my fear, staring at that head of hair. At least, it wasn't too terrible. Scary, yes, but it was reassuring to think my brain wasn't inventing some face. That reassurance didn't last long. The next night it happened again. Sleep paralysis. And once more, the head was there. But this time, it was clearer. I could see its completely white eyes, void of any pupils, just staring at me. I knew it was watching me because my whole body screamed with the instinct that I was being observed. What the heck? At this point, I really wished it would stop. But the next night my prayers went unanswered. This time, the head was even closer. I could now see the strange, crooked teeth in its smile. A grin that felt like it was hiding something sinister. Its white eyes seemed to pierce through me as I lay, frozen, in terror. It lasted all night. My work started to suffer. I slept during the day, trying and failing to stay awake at night. I hated those episodes. The next night, the head appeared again. Slowly, it rose beside me. I still couldn't move. I still couldn't scream. I still couldn't escape. And that's when I saw it. The paper clenched between its teeth. Was it a note? It was hard to read at first, the handwriting so sloppy it looked like a child's. But eventually, I made out the words. Girlfriend. What the hell? Was this demon seriously trying to propose to me? With all the strength I had, I tried to shake my head in denial, but, of course, I couldn't do anything. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and as I gave up, a smile spread across its face. I think it mistook my silence for agreement, and that's how our relationship started. Each night the head appeared, clutching a note between its crooked teeth. Some nights, it was a sweet message. Other nights, it was a threat. Warnings about what it might do if I left. Hoped things would get better. I even hired a therapist, but my hopes for a brighter future were dashed yesterday. While pacing frantically around my room trying to figure out how to stay awake, I noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under the bed. Slowly, I crouched down and reached beneath it. Notes. All of them. All those notes I thought I was imagining. There they were, scattered on the floor in front of me. My blood ran cold, and I felt tears welling up. Among them, I saw the one note that read, "Girlfriend, is the head real? It can't be, but what other explanation is there? Maybe I don't need to break up with him after all. Maybe it's this cursed house, and I need to leave now. I've packed my essentials and am ready to leave this place for good, and I pray that my boyfriend finally takes the hint and leaves me alone. Unexplained events at a new storage facility. I work in a storage facility that I think might be haunted. Let me explain. I've always been a skeptic. Paranormal shows never interested me, and I honestly found them pretty ridiculous. I'm not into horror either. It just doesn't appeal to me. To me, things that go bump in the night were just fictional. At least, that's what I believed. But now, after what's been happening recently, I'm not sure what to think. I'm hoping someone on Reddit can help me make sense of all this, because I've been trying to figure it out myself, and honestly, I'm stumped. Let me provide some context first. I work in the self-storage industry and have been at this job for 3 years. I recently got promoted to general manager, which means I'm now in charge of my own facility. Luckily, I got assigned to a brand new building, which makes this whole situation even more puzzling. To briefly explain my role, my assistant manager and I oversee the facility. We each work solo twice a week, and the rest of the time, we're together. Most of our work is split between the office and the property itself. The building is climate controlled, with 3 floors and 748 units. It's long, with 2 elevators, one at the north end and the other at the south. The office is near the middle of the building. I started working here about 4 months ago, a couple of months after the facility opened. The original manager transferred unexpectedly, which I found strange because managers typically need to stay for at least 6 months before they can transfer. I'm not sure what his situation was, but that's not really important. When I first arrived, everything seemed normal. Coming from older, more run-down facilities, this one felt like a breath of fresh air. I was excited to be in charge of a brand new location. At the time, we were only about 10% occupied. The first few days were fine. I got familiar with the place and the customers, and I reorganized the supply room and break area to suit my preferences. During the first week, my assistant manager was helping out at another facility, so I was on my own. This is when I had my first strange experience. One day, I was doing my usual walkthrough of the building, something I do twice a day. I reached the 2nd floor and was making my way down the aisles when I noticed something odd. In the back row, I saw what looked like a shadow pass by. Now, seeing a shadow in a public space didn't immediately alarm me, but it was strange because I hadn't heard or seen anyone else in the building. I was the only one there. I checked the security system when I got back to the office, but there was no record of anyone entering or leaving the building. I forgot to mention something important. Customers need a code to enter the building and use the elevators, so we always know if someone's been in the building and when. Like I said, I'm a skeptic, so even though the shadow was unusual, I thought it must have been a customer who slipped in and out without me noticing. When my assistant came back, I didn't tell her about the shadow. At the time, I didn't think it was important, and I didn't want to sound crazy. A few weeks passed without anything unusual happening, and I had pretty much forgotten about the shadow. That is, until I saw it again in the same spot. This time, it lingered a little longer. I stopped in my tracks, and it felt like it noticed me. I quickly walked toward it, eager to confirm it was just a person. When I reached the corner, the shadow was gone. I took the elevator back down to the office to ask my assistant if she or anyone else had been upstairs. She looked at me, confused, and said no. No, I've been here all day, and no one's been in the building since Joe came by this morning, she said, pointing to a unit near the office. I felt a knot form in my stomach. There had to be another explanation, right? Yasha, my assistant, noticed my reaction. Why? Did something happen upstairs? She asked. I hesitated, then reluctantly explained what I saw, but quickly added, it was probably just my imagination or weird lighting. Yasha looked at me for a moment before responding. I've seen them too. They've been here since we opened. Have you heard anything yet? At this point, I was intrigued. What do you mean since we opened? Well, she paused. I didn't want to say anything, but weird stuff's been happening here from the start. I even found a burned bundle of sage on the second floor when we first opened. It looked like it had been burned either during or right after construction. I threw it out, but it was strange. I let out a small laugh. Sage? Seriously? Yasha nodded with a smile. She could tell how absurd it sounded. I know, right? But what if there's something to it? I shrugged it off. Probably just superstition. While part of me felt relieved that I wasn't the only one experiencing strange things, another part of me started to worry. What if I couldn't explain it away? What if something was actually going on? That was 3 weeks ago, and since then, I haven't seen the shadow again. But I heard something odd this afternoon. I was on the second floor, walking down the back row, when I clearly heard 2 women talking. Their voices were low enough that I couldn't make out what they were saying, but there were definitely 2 distinct female voices. Naturally, by the time I reached the corner, there was no one there, and I was the only person in the building. So now I'm asking, what do I do? The skeptic in me still wants to believe this is just a series of strange coincidences. Or maybe I'm just losing my mind, along with Yasha. If anyone has advice or any idea of what's going on, I'd really appreciate it. I'll keep everyone updated on any new developments. Thanks for listening. The Birch Ring. When we were 12, Eli invited us over for a sleepover at his house, which sat right on the edge of the woods. Everyone in town claimed we're cursed. There were always stories about those woods, how strange things happened there, how people entered and never came out. Though no one spoke of it openly, if you walked near the woods on a dark night, you could almost feel the weight of those stories pressing in on you. It was a hot summer night, the air thick and warm, and the crickets loud enough to drown out everything else. It was the kind of night that felt like anything could happen, where the line between reality and imagination blurred just enough to make you question what you knew. Around midnight, Eli, who was always the one to push the limits, dared us to venture past the tree line. About 20 feet into the woods stood a strange circle of birch trees, barely noticeable in the daylight, but unsettling under the moonlight. Their white trunks were thin and smooth, yet twisted in unnatural ways. We had all seen the circle before. It was just a small group of trees growing oddly close together, their trunks curving as if reaching for one another. It wasn't much to look at during the day, but with our flashlights illuminating them, they looked almost wrong, like bones, as though they didn't belong. We stood in the center of the circle, trying to act unafraid, to prove we were tough, but there was something different about that place. It was too quiet. The kind of silence where you could hear your heartbeat pounding in your ear. No wind, no bugs, just the sound of our breathing, shallow and uncertain. "Why is it so quiet?" Lucas asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the silence. It was true. The usual sounds of the night were gone. It was just us in that ring, encased in an eerie stillness. It felt like we were waiting for something, or maybe something was waiting for us. Eli laughed, attempting to ease the tension. "What if we're summoning ghosts?" he joked. But his voice wavered at the end, and there was a hint of doubt, as if he wasn't entirely convinced it was a joke. As though on cue, right after Eli spoke, all of our flashlights flickered and went out at once. The sudden darkness felt oppressive, pressing in on us. We scrambled to turn the flashlights back on, but they refused to work. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then we heard it. Snap. A twig breaking behind us. We spun around, the darkness swallowing everything. We called each other's names, laughed nervously, pretending we weren't terrified. But we didn't move. We stayed frozen in the center of the circle, rooted to the spot. When the lights finally flickered back on, Eli was gone. We searched for him for what felt like hours. We shouted his name, ran through the trees, and crashed through the underbrush, hoping he'd jump out from behind a tree, laughing, claiming it was all a prank. But we didn't find him. We ran back to his house, banging on the door until his mom came out, looking confused and half asleep. She called the police right away. They searched that night, the next day, and even the following week. They scoured the woods, checked every inch of that area, but there was no sign of Eli. Then, almost a week later, the police found his shoes. They were right in the center of the birch ring, still tied. There were no footprints leading anywhere, just his shoes, sitting there as though placed carefully. Over the years, the trees have grown thicker, the forest slowly overtaking that part of the land. Every time I pass by those woods now, it feels like they've gotten darker, closer. We don't talk about Eli much anymore. Not really. But sometimes, when the air grows heavy and the sky turns dark too early, Lucas tells me he can hear Eli calling him from the woods. Just after dusk, he says. A whisper on the wind. A voice he recognizes but can never quite place. None of us go near those woods now, and we don't have sleepovers anymore. It emerged from the mist. Get up, Brennan. This is the third time this month. That was the last thing I heard as an employee at the Bristleton Hotel. Honestly, I couldn't fault Claire. She was my boss after all. She was simply doing her job, and it was clear I wasn't doing mine well enough. My day consisted of cleaning hotel rooms, and when I wasn't doing that, I was dealing with drunk patrons who made 3 times my salary, demanding more drinks from the other side of the bar. To put it bluntly, there wasn't much room for sleep, and the hotel rooms I couldn't afford under normal circumstances became far too tempting to resist. That day, I left early in my 2007 Toyota Camry. It wasn't exactly a Ferrari, but it got me where I needed to go, and that was good enough for me, or at least it was. After deciding that 2 p.m. was nap time, I doubt I'll be driving to the hotel again. The drive was the same as always, though a bit earlier than I'd expected. A thick fog had settled in, reminding me of Silent Hill, a reference that probably makes me sound older than I feel. I sat in the car, music blaring with my windows down, tapping the steering wheel in rhythm. It wasn't until the song ended that I noticed just how quiet it was. Not just the roads. Everything seemed quiet. There were no birds singing, no cyclists, not even insects crashing into my already dirty windshield. At first, it felt peaceful. I slowed the car, hoping to enjoy the rare tranquility before the chaos I expected to face at home. I pulled over on a run-down country road. Getting out of the car, I thought, this could be my last drive from the hotel. I might as well enjoy it. I pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes from my coat pocket. I wasn't much of a smoker, but now and then, one helped me unwind. I stared at the fog in the distance. At first, it was calming, but after a while something felt off. It was as if I was looking at something that my mind couldn't quite grasp. I tried to blame it on the damp, discolored cigarette, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was time to head home. I didn't know much, but I knew that much. A little over 15 minutes later, I pulled into my driveway. My lawn was starting to look like a jungle, something I'd have to deal with soon. As I walked to my front door, I glanced over at my neighbor's porch. Mr. Binney was asleep in his chair. I had no idea how he didn't wake up with the noise of my car, but I wasn't complaining. His constant back-in-my-day rants were becoming unbearable. After a few turns of the key and some shoulder bumps, I got the door open. It squeaked loudly, a reminder that I needed to get the hinges fixed. WD-40 didn't fix everything. I opened the fridge, hoping for a quick snack. I pulled out what looked like a red smoothie, which I assumed my sister had made before leaving for school. She was the healthy one in the family. I took a sip. It was horrible, metallic and bitter, probably full of health benefits, but I didn't want any part of it. I put it back where I found it. I spent about an hour browsing LinkedIn, searching for a job that paid above minimum wage. Just as I thought I was getting somewhere, my internet connection died. I could only laugh at my own luck. I lived in rural Nevada, so poor internet wasn't exactly a surprise. I decided to call it a night on the job hunt. The time was 7:30, so I figured it was time to make some dinner. I wasn't a chef, but I could manage plain boiled pasta. I filled a pot with fusilli, planning to save some for tomorrow's lunch. I carried it to the sink to fill it with water. That's when I noticed something odd. The water was tinted reddish brown. I wasn't too concerned at first. It probably had something to do with a leak or issue with the pipes. I'd call the water company in the morning. I didn't know anything about plumbing. I dumped the pasta water into the front yard, trying to avoid spilling it on my already overstuffed trash can. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed Mr. Binney's porch light was still on. I assumed he had just forgotten to turn it off when he went inside. But as I got closer, I saw something strange. Mr. Benny was still in his chair, seemingly asleep, but something wasn't right. He was unnaturally pale. He wasn't exactly tan before, but this was something else. I called his name, but got no response. Feeling uneasy, I shook him by the shoulders. His head jerked back, and that's when I saw the gash on his neck, a deep cut exposing his windpipe. I stumbled back, barely catching myself on the porch railing. A deep, wide cut like that should have bled profusely, but there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere on or around him. His white shirt was pristine, aside from the beer stains. It was as if he were a wax figure. Every bit of blood had vanished. His dog, lifeless, sat on his lap. I didn't have the courage to check if it had suffered the same fate. Before I could process what I was seeing, the porch light flickered and cut out, plunging everything into darkness. Even the moon refused to shine on the grim scene. I'll admit, I screamed. I sprinted to the fence that separated our yards, unwilling to step into the fog that hung over the street. With a burst of adrenaline, I jumped over the fence with more agility than I'd ever thought I had. I made it to my door, which I'd forgotten to lock. I shoved it open, cursing myself for not fixing it sooner. I quickly entered, and thankfully, it shut behind me with a little effort. I grabbed my phone and tried to call 911, but my fingers were shaking too much. I finally dialed the numbers, only for the screen to flash an error message. No explanation, just error. I fell back onto my couch. Desperate, I tried calling my sister and everyone else, but I kept getting the same message. I knew I couldn't stay there. Whoever or whatever did this to Mr. Benny was likely aware I was home. I had to leave. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door. Then I remembered the gun my father had gifted me when I moved out. It wasn't fancy, just a Colt 1911, but it was better than nothing. I grabbed it from the drawer and crept downstairs, trying not to make any noise. The door opened easily this time, and I rushed out to the car. But when I turned the key, something was wrong. There was no gas. I didn't understand. I'd had a full tank earlier, and I had only driven about 60 miles. The car wouldn't start. It wasn't running on empty. It was as if the gas had just disappeared, just like Mr. Benny's blood. I wanted to chalk it up to coincidence, but everything was stacking up too perfectly. Then it hit me. I hadn't stumbled upon a crime scene. Whatever did, this wasn't gone. It was still here. It was playing a twisted game with me. I've been locked in my car for the past 2 hours, writing this, hoping someone will find it. To anyone who reads this, take my advice. Don't stare into the fog. You never know what might be staring back.